Greetings and welcome to another, one more, not one fewer, nor none more, but rather one more, another installment of QuantSlob. And no, you are not dreaming. This is 12 in our basic application series. This time around, we're going to kick off our long-awaited, highly anticipated microseries on statistical hypothesis tests. Later on in this microseries, we're going to take a detailed examination of the mechanics of performing a statistical hypothesis test. But what I want to do here in part one is consider some historical context. Appreciating and understanding the mechanics of modern statistical hypothesis testing is going to be a lot more natural with a little bit of historical perspective. Modern statistical hypothesis testing didn't just fall from the sky, didn't simply appear from within a vacuum, as the saying goes. So what I want to offer here is that the modern statistical hypothesis test is the product of an evolution of intellectual thought. Our perspective here, very condensed to be sure, takes us all the way back to some, as you can see, ancient antecedents. We're going to go all the way back to classical and Eastern thinking, and this may seem like a bit of a reach, but I think that there's something here for us. We're going to consider the popular emergence of institutions of higher learning and the pursuit of systematic investigation. And we're going to consider some modern theories of learning. We're including these here not for their application to education, but for what they say or posit about how people learn. There's obviously a lot to be said about contrasting early classical thinking and Eastern thinking, but what they have in common, one overarching commonality lay certainly in the notion of higher truth, and by implication the worthiness of its pursuit, and that truth has order, which in turn implies purpose. Throughout, there is certainly the suggestion of attainability or accessibility, but the major similarity here that I want to point out is so obvious that it might be easy to miss for taking it for granted, and that is simply the emphasis on critical examination. And one way to say this simply is that just because somebody feels like doing something or the village chieftain tells them to do something does not necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. The emergence of higher learning institutions may even predate the classical and Eastern thinking we just looked at, perhaps going all the way back, perhaps almost 3,000 years. And we can also include here in this list, it's not here, the House of Wisdom, so-called House of Wisdom in Baghdad around the 8th century. We see here the ushering in of the Second Millennium, saw the emergence of European universities, including the University of Bologna, known, of course, as we all know, for their world-class College of Lunch Meat Studies. The importance here is not just the centralization of information, okay? Libraries provide for that. More importantly, with centralized instruction comes a more uniform, cohesive narrative. And sure enough, doesn't take very long, we see this uniformity play out in more systematized approaches to understanding natural phenomena. Throughout this whole timeline, of course, we have the development of mathematics, and mathematics is, of course, a global phenomenon. At some point, I might create a topical video dedicated to this, but I'll mention it here briefly because it's kind of interesting. The archaeological record seems to indicate that games of chance are virtually prehistorical. They found dice like modern dice that date back like 5,000 years. And maybe the word mystery here is a little bit too strong, but it's certainly something of a curiosity that despite this deep history of gaming, that there doesn't really appear to be any record, an ancient record anyway, of anyone attempting to fashion some mathematical description of games of chance. No suggestion of probability or the idea of sample spaces. And it wasn't until maybe the 1500s where we start to see glimmerings of the application of math to games of chance. Okay, now here we are in the modern era. We see the emergence of psychology. And many theories concerning how people learn or acquire and apply knowledge. And I want to stress here, like I did at the very beginning, that we're looking at behaviorism, constructivism, cognitivism for what they say about learning, not for their application to education. And we're not really interested either here in speculating on the underlying mechanics. We're focused on the theories or conjectures in and of themselves. That's our area of focus here. And many of you will be aware that there have been some, shall we say, disagreements between behaviorists and constructivists. But in any case, there's a close similarity between constructivism and cognitivism here. One could say that constructivism is a contextual-based flavor of cognitivism. For our purposes here, however, ultimately they both theorize that we gain knowledge by generalizing experience. And if we're bold, we can throw all of this stuff up into a big pot, crank up the heat, and arrive finally here at a synthesis of modern statistical hypothesis tests. What do we have? In no particular order, a willingness to challenge the status quo. Big. An understanding that we may only have incomplete and, importantly, variable information. And we also, of course, require a uniform, universally applicable, and theoretically meaningful technique. Make sure to check out this entire microseries. If it should please you, it would please me greatly. Subscribe to the channel. That's it. That's going to do it this time around. Thank you very much for tuning in, and don't forget to stay tuned for more QuantSlob.